So I just wanted to introduce this next video. I will be making a fermented plant juice, also known as KNF food, Korean natural farming food. So it's a great low-cost way to make a fertilizer for your plants. That being said, I wanted to clarify that this channel won't be fully dedicated to Korean natural farming. There's already plenty of content on that out there. I just wanted to demonstrate the various low-cost inputs I'm using to be a regenerative farmer. And also with this first batch I'm making, I don't have very large containers. I just have some small glass jars that normally I would use at least a half-gallon glass jar or up to a 5-gallon bucket to make my fermented plant juice. However, for the time being, I only have some jars that I've recycled from honey I've bought in the past, and so I'm doing the best with what I got. And kind of the whole purpose behind this channel is to demonstrate how we can implement regenerative farming practices at a low cost. So practicing what I preach, I'm using what I have around me. Eventually I will acquire some bigger vessels so I can make larger quantities and be able to feed my plants a little better. But for now, I'm working with what I have, so I encourage you guys to work with what you have. And I'm using a Guava fruit for this, but you can make this fermented plant juice out of almost any plant material. So find what you have around you, find something that's similar to the plants that you're going to feed it with, or make a fermented plant juice out of the actual plant that you're going to feed. The best food for the plant is itself, actually. So take that into consideration when you're making your fermented plant juices. And yeah, if you have any questions or comments, holla at your boy. Let's get into it. Basically going to be taking some fruit material from this Guava tree. Guava is a variety of guava that grows like crazy out here where I'm at in Hawaii, and going to be fermenting it, and then it'll produce a concentrated food that can be diluted and then applied to plants as a organic fertilizer. So I'm going to pick some of these fruits and then process them. And I am recording everything on my phone right now. I'm working on getting a video camera, but so forgive the kind of choppy editing. That'll be me kind of doing the thing and then explaining it after I've done it, because for now I don't even have a tripod, but we'll get there. So here we go. I'm gonna pick some of these unripe fruits, and then I'll show you what's next. Okay, so I've collected my fruits. Now I'm going to go down to my kitchen area to process and move on to the next step. Here's the plant it all was picked from. And I picked enough that should fill about a mason jar or a glass jar, about 2/3 full. You'll see that in the next steps. So here's all the materials I need to make my KNF food. The only thing that is store-bought is the brown sugar. And a jar, but I mean, I got this from some honey I bought. And then I'm gonna use this pot to mix the processed fruit with the sugar before I put it in the jar and seal the jar with a breathable lid. So I'm gonna go ahead and process the fruit and mix it in with the sugar and show you what it looks like. So I have my fruit processed, and just so you get a look for what it looks like, I cut them into about 1/2 inch to 1/4 inch wide pieces. I mixed a few ripe pieces of the ripe fruit. I kind of wish I'd only picked ripe ones, because they seem to have more juice in them. But the green ones have a fair bit, and there aren't as many ripe ones around. So I'm going to stick with the green. I'm going to throw them in the pot, mix in the sugar. So here I've moved into a little bit of lighting. I've mixed in the sugar, and you can kind of see where it's at. It should be about 1/3 of the weight to 1/2 of the weight of the material. I don't have a scale, so I'm eyeballing it. I've done this many times, and I kind of have a feel for it. But when in doubt, definitely weigh it, just so you're foolproof. But I'm going to put this in the jar now and cover it with a breathable lid. Okay, we're back. It's been 4 days and the fermentation is complete, and I know that it's complete by smelling it, which I can actually smell it through the newspaper. It has like a slightly sweet alcoholic smell. Yeah, kind of like homemade wine, I guess. And also another sign is if it starts to show mold on top. This one hasn't gotten to a moldy phase, surprisingly enough, with how humid it is here. So all I'm gonna do, it's filled up with some liquid, and now what I'm gonna do is pour this liquid off into a cup and super saturate it with some more brown sugar. And you can always do it into the final vessel. This isn't the vessel I'm going to store it in, but for it to be easier for you to see, I'm going to use this because I didn't make very much. I normally do this in at least a half-gallon jar or a 5-gallon bucket. I don't have half-gallon jars right now. This is the biggest I have, so I'm working with what I got. But so it'll probably only make enough to fit this little jar. But here we go. I'm going to pour off the liquid. There will be no need to squeeze any of that liquid out. It'll actually affect the end product. And so we just want to gently, carefully pour off this liquid while keeping all the fruit in there. You can compost this fruit or make vinegar with it. Oh no, we got a piece in there. Hopefully my microbes didn't affect that. I'm gonna set this down so I can keep my hand here. So I didn't squeeze any of it out. I left it all intact, and I am going to compost that. And then we're left with this, some fermented plant juice. All right, so now I'm gonna take my brown sugar and super saturate this solution. And what that means is I'm gonna put enough sugar that it absorbs all the water content in this solution because it's pretty liquidy and has a lot of water. So this sugar is gonna absorb that water, and it's what's gonna make it shelf stable. This right here, you can store in the fridge and use it as is, but I don't have refrigeration here, and I'm sure that most of us don't have, even when we have a fridge, we don't have enough space to be filling it up with jars of all our KNF solutions. So I believe it's more practical to store it on the shelf as opposed to in a fridge. And I'm gonna add a little sugar here to start. And you'll see that the sugar at first is gonna sink to the bottom. And that means that I don't have enough in there. I'm gonna mix it in. So we'll pour some more, and it's starting to float for a little longer, but it's still sinking down. So I'm gonna keep pouring it in there. Oh, there's a big chunk that might be enough right there, but we'll see. Stir all that in. And also what you want to look for as you're stirring it in is after you stir it really well, you let it settle, and you should see a ring of sugar start to form at the bottom. Now we should start to get little icebergs of sugar here on the top of this, because it's not, it's starting to super saturate. And yes, now the sugar's kind of sitting on top of the liquid, so that means we're getting close. And if you overdo it a little bit, it's slowly falling in now, as opposed to before it would drop right to the bottom. And if you overdo it a little bit, there's no harm in adding a little extra sugar. I'm gonna let it sit for a moment and see if I have a ring on the bottom. And now the sugar's really floating on top. and sinking down slowly. So that is a really good sign that we're almost there. And I am starting to see that little ring of sugar. Quite faint. So I'm gonna put maybe a tiny bit more sugar in just to make sure. Again, better a little bit too much sugar than not enough. And I got another nice chunk in there, so this is probably gonna be enough. Sunshine, where are you? Yeah, so now I'm definitely getting that definitive ring. I'm gonna walk around to the sun. So can be seen right there. You get a little sugar starting to form around the edge here. And so it is done, and you can eat it. Wow, actually tastes really good. That's the cool thing about KNF. Everything you make is edible, so you can feel good about feeding it to the plants that you're gonna eat. So lastly, I'm gonna pour it into this jar for final storage. And oh no. Got a little bit, I'll just feed to the plants today. And that is our fermented plant juice. Cheers. So now that we have a finished product, this can be diluted into water that you can either add as a foliar spray or as a soil drench. So the ratio you want to do is 1 to 500, so per gallon is about 8 milliliters. You can make this if you're just home gardening in a little garden bed, or if you've got 50 acres, you'll just want to use a 5-gallon bucket or make it in a big trash can, and you'll be able to receive the same product. Obviously a little more sugar in the mix if you're going to be doing a trash can full, but it's still going to be cheaper than buying conventional fertilizers, and it's a sustainable and healthier way to feed our plants. So. FPJ for the win.